Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Vida podcast, where we help educate military veterans and their spouses on opportunities in Web3. Our plan is to host a series of industry leaders, many of whom are veterans or spouses themselves, so that we can learn about their journey down the crypto rabbit hole while understanding opportunities for transitioning veterans in the industry. I'm Chris Perkins, president of CoinFund. I'm a combat Marine veteran who spent 15 years on Wall Street before transitioning into the crypto space. And before we begin, I would like to thank our sponsor, Luca, who's dedicated their time and resources to make this podcast possible. For our 21st episode, we'll be speaking with the Chief Executive Officer of MERIDIAN DLT and co-founder of Cut Carbon Distributed Technologies, Canadian military veteran and artilleryman, Paul THOMSON. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So I think this is our first Canadian vet that we've had on, which makes me excited. I told you about my background, and my family has some Canadian roots. Would love for you to start. Would love to hear a bit about your background.
Yeah, thanks very much. I appreciate you having me on. Yeah, so I born in Toronto, raised here in Nova Scotia. I went to university here as well. Joined the Canadian Army shortly after university. I served for 5 years in the Royal Regiment of Canadian Artillery, so that explains my lack of hearing. I'm pleased to say that my darling daughter, my eldest daughter, is actually currently serving in the same regiment. She graduated from the Royal Military College in Kingston last year, and she's on her advanced artillery training right now. So pretty pleased about that.
So that's pretty great. Did you have any chance to deploy anywhere over your service period?
Yeah, I didn't. I was in the early 90s, and at that time the artillery wasn't getting too much call up in the Canadian military, but I absolutely loved my 5 years in. It was a very meaningful time for me, and I kind of say to everybody that, all the lessons that I learned back then are applicable to everything I do in business today.
So were you mostly like a fire direction officer, a forward observer?
Mostly gun line, almost all gun line, actually. Yeah. So, but I did start my career in the military as a private recruit. So,
wow.
So RCO actually preferred his officers to come from the ranks. So I was fortunate enough to do basic training twice, which was which was awesome.
Yeah. So the thing about artillery, and a lot of people don't understand, is generally you have to be good at math. You have to be very, very precise because you get your math wrong and bad things happen. I remember when I transitioned into finance, I'm like, hey, what do you do? And I was like, well, I was an FDO, so I have to calculate mathematical equations very quickly. But if I get my math wrong, people die. What about you guys in finance? You lose a little bit of money. So anyway, I think it's very applicable, and I think it's also very applicable in the blockchain space. After your service, can you walk us through your transition, and how did you face that challenge?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I had always known. I visited the New York Stock Exchange when I was 16 years old with a friend of mine, and he ended up in securities law, and I ended up in the capital markets. I think it had a pretty profound effect on us watching the trading on the floor, and that was back in the 80s. So there was still floor trading. So I kind of knew from that minute on that the capital markets were where I wanted to be after university. I did. It's going to sound really corny, but I wanted to join the military to, out of a sense of duty and patriotism. And I have a family history of service going back hundreds of years in the British Army and Canadian Army. So I knew I wanted to serve as well. And but I ultimately I knew that my place was going to be hopefully in the capital markets if I could find my way there. And so I ended up at a venture capital firm here in Canada. Started early in my career just as a trader and loved every minute of it, and sort of moved on into the compliance role. So I ended up chief compliance officer of an investment firm here in Canada, which basically meant I said no all day. So that was good. And I ended up doing most of my career in the capital markets. Absolutely loved it. And I think, honestly, the leadership qualities and the tasks that you get, regardless of your rank in the military, you're put in positions of leadership and different circumstances that usually at that age you're not given anywhere else except the military. And I think you can easily take those leadership skills into just about anything you want to do.
Couldn't agree more. So you went to university, you went to military service, and
Yeah.
then you just transitioned directly into that VC fund.
Yeah, pretty close. I was in a sales role for a little while and gained some kind of corporate with a big Fortune 500 company. Really enjoyed that. But I knew my heart was in the capital markets, and I knew I
Yeah.
wanted to be in the Bay Street, Wall Street kind of place. And and it's a funny thing, when you have that service in your background, you're willing to try just about anything. You feel like you can accomplish just about anything if you put your head and your body into it. And making just decided to make that transition. It's what I always wanted to do, so I thought I'd take the leap.
So it sounds like your transition was very successful. Were there any tricks to it? Did you, how did you do it? It sounds like it was very seamless. What was the secret sauce there?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it was something that I always wanted to do. And I remember talking to people about it, and then a lot of people will tell you no, and why would you do that, and why are you taking that risk? And I really believe that you have to follow your own thoughts and heart into something, and that's where you're going to find success. So for me, it was just I'd say it's that old 80-20. I'd say 80% of people told me I shouldn't do it, and 20% said to go for it. And my heart was in the capital market, so I just made that leap. And honestly, from that day on, I've enjoyed every minute at my work, and it's been just great.
It's great. So as you made your way up your career path, you ended up as a compliance officer, but then it sounds like you found crypto and
Yeah,
blockchain technology along the way. Can you talk us through that discovery?
yeah, it was really interesting. I mean, I've had such a fun career. So I was working at a venture capital firm. I was in IR initially, and then became the CCO. And we, of course, invested in lots of portfolio companies. And one of our companies that was early was a blockchain company. And so I had to do a lot of research on the company and the space, and just was amazed at the technology. And part of that was I was invited out to a blockchain event and happened to meet a young guy who was telling me all about this Bitcoin. This was back in 2011, I think it was. That old saying that traders trade. I mean, I'll trade anything. So it was interesting to me when I first heard about it, and I thought, well, what an incredible technology. I mean, Bitcoin, the thing itself aside, just the technology behind it was so fascinating to me. And I just saw so many use cases for it right out of the gate. And I talked to my cousin later that day, who's a stock, well, what used to be a stockbroker, not anymore, asset manager. And I told him all about it, and he said, "That's just crazy. What are you talking about?" And I said, "Well, I think I'm going to get involved in this somehow." So I bought my first Bitcoin that night for, I think it was $120 or something US, and ever since then I've been hooked. I mean, I thought the technology behind it is so sound and so interesting. I thought it was going to change global finance forever from the minute I heard about it. And it's interesting that young person that introduced it to me, we ended up sort of forming a little trading group. We built a little algorithm that was doing some pretty interesting predatory trading, and then he and my other trading partner in that ended up working at Kraken, and very senior guys there now, and very successful at Kraken. So pretty interesting.
That's really interesting. And so then you went on to be the co-founder of Cut Carbon Distributed Technologies, and
Yeah,
you also now serve as the CEO of Meridian DLT.
yeah.
Can you walk us through those companies?
Yeah, sure. So it's interesting. Meridian um, uh, is a company in the climate technology field, and it's a blockchain based company, and that's where I was introduced to it when I was still at the VC. And so I thought it was really interesting because the technology itself is fantastic. Tends, especially at that time, to have a pretty high negative impact on the environment. And this group at Meridian, my partners come from, one comes from the hedge fund space, and one comes from finance as well, and renewable energy. And so we had this idea that, what if we could develop a blockchain technology that was powered entirely by renewable energy? We built a private data network for that. And then we thought, well, what are we doing using these kind of dirty servers? Because all the good things that we're doing, building this private data network on a blockchain, is now running across and being stored on dirty servers that are power hungry. And so we developed our own servers, which are nano servers that we custom build here in Canada. They're energy efficient. They use 25 watts of power. They're the size of your iPhone, and they use the same energy as the power cord for your iPhone. So it's, when you look at bigger data servers, like they would use at the typical data center, they use 2,500 to 3,500 watts of power. We use 25 watts of power. So it's a significant difference. And the next stage at Meridian is we've now built the blockchain technology powered by renewable energy, running across our own servers that are energy efficient. Now we plug those into renewable energy like wind and solar projects. Now we're going out and buying those wind and solar projects ourselves. So we're acquiring, the last stage of that is to acquire our own renewable energy, and we'll have our own servers on site.
Got it. So I should think of it as a layer one blockchain that is incredibly efficient from an energy perspective, and that's ultimately going to be powered by renewable energy. So something that's
Absolutely.
like super. Wow, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I was going to say, and I can tell you, Cut was formed out of the genesis of Cut came from that. And so we were doing all of this in the non-crypto space. So we have corporate customers and organizations that, run across our blockchain and our data network using our servers and all of that. And the genesis of Cut came from that. We thought, well, we're doing this for the non-crypto community. We should do something like this for the crypto community. And we were all sort of, I had been trading crypto for quite a long time, and my partners had as well been involved in it. So we were all introduced to each other, and we all had very common values, but also common traits. And so that really is where Cut came from.
Understood. So is it fair to think about it in a mental model that Meridian is the layer one, and then Cut is an app that's built on that layer one?
Yeah, so exactly. So Cut is actually a client technically of Meridian.
Yep.
Yeah. So everything has been developed by Meridian, and Cut is a company based in Liechtenstein that launched the token in a legal jurisdiction.
And tell us about Cut. I know it's carbon based. Can you walk
Yeah.
us through the project, the users, the utility?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So CUT stands for Carbon Utility Token. It is a utility token. We wanted to, when we decided to start this project, we wanted to be in a legal and regulated jurisdiction. So we went out hunting for that. We found Liechtenstein, where they had just passed a Blockchain and Crypto Act through their parliament, making it fully legal. We actually hired the lawyer who wrote that act for that passed parliament. So we thought we want to be as credible as possible. We'll get the guy that actually wrote the act to be our lawyer there. We then went and got a legal opinion from the regulator in Liechtenstein that our token was a utility token and not a security. That was really important to us as well. We do have Swiss banking, so we have banking in Switzerland. That's important only in that it means that we've been very, very vetted as founders.
Yep.
So we've been vetted, a few times in Liechtenstein. We've been vetted by the FMA, the Financial Market Authority in Liechtenstein, and we've been vetted in Switzerland by the bank and their regulator. So yeah, we wanted to set it up in a way that it was legal and credible, regulated, that it was a utility, it had a purpose. We all love crypto, and we saw the use cases that were available out there, and we wanted to make sure that that we were a utility, that it had a purpose behind it. And so we actually went out and bought ISO protocol certified, very high value carbon offsets, and we tokenized them.
I see.
Yeah.
And so those tokens represent carbon credits, essentially tokenized carbon credits.
Exactly. Yeah. So we actually went out and bought the offsets ourselves. So we actually own the offsets. They're on our balance sheet. We're not brokering. Some other things have
Yep.
brokered offsets, but we actually own them, and then we tokenize them, and that gives people the ability to use fractions of tons to offset something, as
Sure.
opposed to having to buy massive quantities.
Got it. And do you have existing clients? I know you're a startup. Who are the buyers of those credits typically?
Yeah, it's interesting. So, the thought was, prior to doing the carbon utility token, if I wanted to offset my dinner or a cup of coffee or something, I mean, the way to do that was so complex and so inaccessible to me as an individual. And, most brokers that own offsets are not going to sell you a fraction of a ton.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not worth it to them, right?
Yep.
They'll sell you 1,000 tons or 10,000 tons. And so when we fractionalize it down, it could be pennies to offset your cup of coffee, instead of having to pay $1,000 to offset a
Right.
$2 cup of coffee, which makes no sense. And
Got it.
so yeah, so we have corporations now in Europe. We have a couple of companies in Sweden, telecoms in Sweden and Italy, Croatia, the UK, South Africa, Slovenia, Canada. So we have companies that are actually purchasing cut and retiring it. So the
Yep.
retirement is the important part. It's retired against their carbon footprint. And then we have individuals that are using it as well.
Got it. And uh, and that's powered again on the blockchain,
It
the Meridian
is.
blockchain. Is and how would you describe that blockchain? Is it like it's called DLT? Is it a closed blockchain? Is it an open source? Is it EVM? How do you think about it?
Yeah, so the Meridian blockchain is actually a private permission blockchain.
Yeah.
Right now, CUT is on Ethereum. It's an ERC20 token, so it's an Ethereum token. We've just launched our beta out there of an Arbitrum version of CUT as well.
Hmm.
So that's available as well. We wanted to be multi-chain, and so it is on two public chains, Ethereum and Arbitrum, and one private chain, Meridian.
Got it. And are there bridges between the two?
Yeah, so we're actually just working on that now for Arbitrum. So
Got it.
yeah, so we're actually working with Arbitrum. Yeah.
Understood. So, hey, as CEO, can you just walk everyone through a typical day?
Yeah, a typical day at Meridian. It's interesting. So at Meridian, which is separate from CUT, but at Meridian as CEO, today was meetings with investors, meetings with potential clients, and I had a number of calls with potential clients this afternoon. That's basically what, as CEO, what I'm doing. I'm selling the company
Yep.
and the project. It's a funny thing, because everybody thinks about CEO and C-suite, and I mean, every day I'm out selling our company. That's what I do. Yeah,
Totally appreciate that. How's the reception been? I mean, it feels like we're coming out of the depths of this bear market.
yeah,
How are things going generally?
yeah. It's really exciting. I mean, at Cut, I think I'll be really honest. I think we were early when we first came out with this idea, because we wanted to be fully regulated. We
Yeah.
wanted, which everybody thought we were crazy. We wanted to make sure that every last thing we were doing was credible and defensible. So the
Yeah.
offsets had to be credible and defensible, and you know, and we were in the middle while we were developing that and trying to be credible and legal, and at that time that was not a popular thing to do. I mean, people were just not in that zone, and so I think we were a bit early. But what I've liked to see is that I think the markets are turning towards institutional grade, credible
Yep.
token projects like ours. And with the MiCA regulations coming out in Europe, the money and crypto assets regulations, we're already MiCA qualified, being in Liechtenstein. So
It's great.
that's fantastic. CSRD is coming out, the new law in Europe right now, which will mandate that 50,000 new companies have to report on their ESG
Hmm.
and their carbon footprint and what they're doing about it. Cut is located in Liechtenstein. We're legal, and we qualify for all of that. So we're positioned very well now.
Yeah. Look, we talk about it here sometimes that you know we always look at big trends, and they come and go, of course, but like the
Yeah,
intersection of big trends is a really interesting place to be.
yeah,
Global climate change and blockchain, AI, blockchain. Like when you find those intersections, there's
Yeah,
definitely interesting things happening. So
there is, and
it's
that's exactly where we're sitting, I think. And not only that, but geographically
yep,
and regulation wise, we're at the perfect intersection. I mean, we're a token project that is fully legal and regulated in Europe that can essentially we can carbon neutralize anything because
yep,
we fractionalized it down. If an exchange wants every single trade to be carbon neutral, you can do that with cut.
yeah.
So that's what's really exciting.
Yeah, one last question on the business because I'm just curious.
Mm.
Do you, where do you find constraints via supply or demand? Right? Is it easy to go out and acquire those carbon offsets, or is it easier
Yeah.
to sell it? How does that line up in your mind?
Yeah, we're very, very fortunate. So, one of our partners in that project is a 30-year veteran of the carbon markets in Canada. And he actually owns landfills, and we're able to have direct access to the offsets through his connections directly into the independent power producers, which for a couple of things. First, we can, find offsets that nobody else has found before by going direct.
Yep,
And we also aren't going through brokers. We're going direct to the owner of the landfill, for example, and negotiating the pricing and the purchase. And, in many cases, we're the first ones who have ever walked in the door asking to buy their offsets. And so for them, it's pretty exciting. And that was sort of where our model came from. We thought, well, we want to have a direct impact on the environment. We don't want it to be
yep,
some future thing that's going to happen. And we really want to have a direct impact. And so by us going and buying them directly from a power producer, it means they have a new line item that they didn't have before. All of a
totally.
sudden, these guys are coming in and buying my offsets. And what it causes him to do is go and tweak his equipment. Maybe he buys new equipment so he can produce even more offsets that we're going to come in and buy.
Yep.
Which,
Do you did you and is your cut sold directly to consumers, or do you like list it on different carbon exchanges?
yeah. So right now it's so the Arbitrum version of Cut is available on Uniswap right now.
Oh wow.
We just did a very soft, what I call a technical launch. We
Yep,
wanted to launch it, do a quiet technical launch, just so we could test everything out, make sure everything is good. That's kind of our mantra is that we want everything to be very credible and defensible, and that includes our tech going up. So we are Arbitrum Cut, which is a cut, is the symbol is up on Uniswap right now. We're talking to multiple centralized exchanges, and so we'll hopefully be on centralized and decentralized.
wow. And
Yeah.
like there's such a massive trend right now towards tokenization. This is a great example.
Oh,
Pre-
thanks. Yeah.
Pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Um, so like pivoting back to veterans, right? Then a lot of them are listening to see like how they can transition into the space.
Yeah.
How do you recommend that they stay up to speed? How do they get educated? Like this market moves so fast. What do you recommend?
It really does. I know it moves, daily, it seems like, and it really is hard to stay on top of it, even when you're in the middle of it. It's hard to stay on top. It's interesting because I've stayed connected to my regiment. I'm president of our regimental association. I'm a regimental senator, and I volunteer for Operation Entrepreneur, which is through the Prince's Trust organization, and so we mentor veterans who are starting their own businesses, and so it is challenging because things do move very fast. If you're interested in something, it's not a chore, right? I mean,
Yeah,
that's what I find. I mean, I don't sit around and read things all night as a chore. It's because I love it, and I love
totally.
staying on top of it. And it is really that finding that thing that you really love to do. I know it's corny. I know everyone says it. It's such a ridiculous cliche, but it really is not work when you're enjoying what you do like that.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's fun.
It is.
Like you just start learning, and you're like, "Wow, I never thought of that." So yeah, I'm completely with
And
you.
and you know what? I think something you learn too, I think pretty quickly in the military where I did, I was very fortunate as a young junior officer. a very experienced warrant officer pulled me aside on my first day and said, listen, this is the way it works. And if you want to be a good leader, here's what you do. And he gave me all the kind of tips from his 30 years of experience, and it was great. And, I've taken that forward with me, and I surround myself with people who are much smarter than I am and much better at things than I am. And I learn from them. And that's what I did as a young junior officer. I surrounded myself with great sergeants and warrants, and I listened to them.
I can totally relate to that.
Yeah.
So, like, as I mentioned previously, like we went through a really tough bear market. It feels like
Hmm.
there's some green shoots that are coming out of this. What
Yeah.
excites you about crypto and Web3?
Yeah, it's really interesting because this has been a really tough, long crypto winter. I mean, we've seen cycles before. I've
Yeah,
never seen a cycle like this before, and the market's tightened up. The regular market's tightened up. I mean, everything tightened up, and I think we're starting to see that turn. What excites me, I think, is we're leading. The FTXs of the world and all the different things that have happened over the last couple of years are shaking out some bad players, and I think that's great. That's exactly what we want to see because we're a regulated, legal token project. We see crypto being used and integrated into the financial markets in the next couple of years as being a really important step in our global finance. But that can only be done with regulated, legal token projects and not projects where you don't know who the founders are. They have cartoon characters as their pictures. I mean,
totally.
I
Yeah,
see it moving into a more serious institutional play, and that's what we want.
yeah. I think the benefit of this cycle has been that a lot of the bad actors, they've been washed out, and
Yeah,
we're hopeful that really thoughtful regulation comes in,
yeah,
that actually helps countries like Canada and the U.S. Be very
yeah.
proactive and catalyze innovation. So
We need to take advantage of this. This is an exciting opportunity in finance for everyone, and to impede it is the wrong move. I
yeah,
mean, we like regulation, but over regulation is never going to work either. So
100%,
yeah,
100%.
yeah.
So what advice would you have? You talked about how you connect with transitioning veterans. What
Mm.
advice would you have for someone who's trying to break in to the crypto space?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think reaching out to somebody. I mean, I'm happy to talk to anybody at any time, and I love helping people out. So, I mean, if anybody listening to this ever wants to reach out, I can be found pretty easily. We're the type of founders that are out there, and all our contact info is there. You can send me a message anytime. I'd be thrilled to help out. I mean, I talk to serving and retired soldiers all the time, and I mean, all the lessons you learned in your service, like persistence. I'd say the number one thing that gets you through any success in your career is probably persistence and never giving up. And I think we all have that experience on a forced march and wanting to give up, but you don't give up. And that directly carries into anything in your career. People don't realize it, I think, but those are the things that will make you successful no matter where you are. In the crypto space, there are more and more of us, I think, that have served and are also in the crypto space, and we all share that bond. That's a very unique bond that I haven't really found. I played sports, I've done lots of things, but I've never found a bond that's as unique as military service. So, if anyone reaches out to me, I'll be happy to help.
What's the best way to connect with you, Paul?
Yeah, we could put up my email address at pt@cut.eco. And honestly, if anyone has any questions or if I can help in any way, I'd be thrilled to.
Awesome. Last question from me. Are you doing any hiring right now?
Yeah, we will be soon, hopefully. Yeah, we're actually, we have our core development team, the most important people on the team. And so hopefully in the next little bit, we'll be looking as we're all coming out of this sort of bear market, but we're, I think, moving into a pretty strong market in the next year.
Great. And are you hiring on the technical side mostly? Are you doing anything on the non-technical side?
Yeah, we don't need any more me's around. Yeah, we want we want good, strong technical devs. Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Makes
Yeah.
sense. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, no, I'm thrilled with the invitation. I really, really appreciate it, and I think the future is great for all of us in the crypto space. I think we're coming out of a tough time, but there's a great future ahead. And I always say any of the skills you learned in the military, if anyone's listening that's a veteran, I mean, those skills are directly applicable to everything in business. So be proud of yourself. Reflect on those skills because they're important.
Couldn't agree more. And thank you again, Paul, for coming on the show today. Incredibly informative discussion. I really, really enjoyed it. And we're really lucky to have a prominent vet like you in the space. And lastly, just want to also thank our sponsor, Luca. Couldn't do this without them. So thank you to Rudy and the team and Robert over there. And we'll see you next time.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks.